Good afternoon, and welcome to the September 1st meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates. We will call this meeting to order, and we will begin by a moment of silence in honor of our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Thank you, and now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk will call the roll.
Richard Anderson. Present. Ronald Bergstrom.
Here.
George Bryant. Somewhere. Leo Kukunis. Here. Christopher Kanega.
Here.
Thomas Keys.
Here.
Marcia King.
Here.
Thomas Lynch.
Here.
Teresa Martin. John Oman.
Here.
Paul Pilcher.
Here.
Anthony Scalise. Fred Schlip.
Here.
Schilp. Charlotte Strebel.
Here.
Julia Taylor. Okay, Mr. Speaker, we have a quorum with 79.55% of the delegates present.
Okay, thank you. I'll now need a motion to approve the calendar of business.
So moved.
Okay, it's moved. Here, moved and second. Is there any further additions or corrections? No. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you should have received a copy of the Journal of August 4th, 2010. I'll need a motion to approve those minutes.
Mr. Speaker, move to approve the Journal of August 4th, 2010 as submitted.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and... Oh, say, yep.
Put me down as an abstention.
Okay, there was another abstention. Okay. We now, okay, two abstentions. We now move on to communications from... Oh, wait a minute, we're also approving the Journal of August 18th. This is what's confusing me, 2010. Do I have a motion to approve that journal?
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, move to approve the Journal of August 18th, 2010 as submitted.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. If there's no additions or corrections, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we will move on. And one abstention. There's quite a few abstentions, I think. People who weren't here. We're experiencing technical difficulties.
You're supposed to announce me.
Well, I'm waiting until you're ready. Sit down. Okay. We'll now have communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners, ably represented by the Vice Chairman, Bill Doherty.
And a cheerful good afternoon to one and all. Always good to see you on a hot summer day out there. Today we had a briefing from the Suicide Prevention Coalition. It's a very serious thing, and the Suicide Prevention Week will be September 5th through September 11th, this coming Sunday through next Friday. And there are many events, one of which is at the on National Suicide Prevention Day, which is the 10th. There is a special QPR training. That's a question response training for youth between 5 and 6:30 p.m. And then there'll be a training for adults from 7 to 9. We have contact information, 508-771-4336 for Beverly Costa Civiola. But the most important thing that I want to get out to people is how important it is to recognize what a serious problem this is on Cape Cod. We're trying to, the thrust is in the beginning to reach out to the youth, but there's more than youth. The elders, the veterans, and even middle-aged men of which some of us find ourselves in that category, are seriously at risk. And it behooves all of us to understand one important thing. If you become aware of someone that has had a significant change in their behavior, that is becoming depressed, is giving their possessions away, and exhibiting what we would call some indications of suicide ideation, it's important that you share that burden with a professional or with someone else. Don't hold it in and think that you're responsible of working by yourself. There is help. You can link to our 211 system. You can link through our web page, through the Human Service web page to get specific information on it. And I hope that anybody that sees this, that is facing something like that, is that they reach out, because help is available. Okay, that in addition to that, we also want to give you a briefing on what we're doing about Earl. I know the storm. It might be downgraded, but we're still expecting some serious implications. And is Sean showing up? I'm going to have, if I have your indulgence, George Hoyfeld will give you a briefing on where we are right now with the emergency planning of this.
Thank you. We were asked to give the commissioners and you an update as to the activities prior to the coming storm. As you may or may not know, the Regional Emergency Planning Committee is sponsored and coordinated through the county. Sean O'Brien is that coordinator, and he's just finishing up at a Regional Emergency Planning Committee meeting. Prior to this, we have, as you might imagine, mobilized or at least gotten ready. The American Red Cross is getting ready. Your County Medical Reserve Corps is getting ready to sort of staff regional shelters. You again may or may not know that there is a regional sheltering plan so that each town does not have to open up a shelter. These were coordinated and put together through a committee of the REPC, police and fire chiefs. The ones in the Lower Cape, which are the ones we expect to be having to maybe open, would be at Nauset Regional, a tech school, and Dennis Yarmouth. Two of those have been already used before and exercised to the point where they allow pets. Two of them. The one at Nauset Regional will not be allowing pets. But right now they're in a little bit of a holding pattern, trying to figure out where the storm is going, but also sort of those initial readiness calls to make sure the availability of people, the availability of assets, the moving of assets to locations covered by the REPC, including Nantucket, have been made. There is also probably going to be an activation of the incident management team. That is, again, a sort of a county-sponsored entity, and they will be opening a MAC, which is a multi-agency coordination location, so that when things do require coordination of assets, and I'm glad that Sean is here. And Sean can fill in what a MAC is.
Bulletin from the front, right?
Thank you. My apologies. We just finished off the Regional Emergency Planning Committee meeting, and so we had about 13 of the 15 towns to participate represented. And basically at this point, we are expecting a storm to probably skirt the Outer Cape. Potentially cross over Nantucket, and affect us probably with some tropical storm force winds, maybe even some hurricane gusts. I think our Outer Cape areas are the place of concern right now. And so what we've done is, as a Regional Emergency Planning Committee, we've begun setting up our precautions. And this is something that we've worked very hard at since 2001 with this committee. So just, and I may repeat since I just came in when George had started, but as of right now, we have 6 regional shelters that are available to open. They are located in, and I'll start from the Outer Cape, Nauset High School, Cape Cod Tech in Harwich, We have Dennis Yarmouth High School, Barnstable High School, Mashpee High School, and the Sandwich Oak Ridge School. And these are the 6 regional shelters that we have developed over the last 3 years to assist our communities. One of the reasons why we went with regional sheltering is primarily we really don't think we have enough volunteers to set up all 31 shelters that were on the books. So these 6 shelters are in strategic locations to assist us. As you can see, we have 2 towards the Outer Cape, 2 in the Mid Cape, 2 on the Upper Cape. We will be making a decision tomorrow afternoon sometime as to whether or not they open. We are waiting for the 12:30 conference call from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the National Weather Service to make those final decisions. And now those shelters are full-service shelters. We have many different agencies that work within those shelters. We have Red Cross, of course, but 3 of those shelters will be able to handle pets. Dennis Yarmouth, Cape Cod Tech, and Sandwich Oak Ridge School will be able to handle pets. Those will be opened should we have to, they will be available should we have to open them up. In addition to setting up the shelters, which we will make a decision on tomorrow, as George mentioned, we will be setting up a multi-agency coordination center. The MAC, as it's called, is made up of members from Barnstable County and the communities that participate with the Emergency Planning Committee. And what this is we like to call it one-stop shopping. This is all of the communities working together, and we would actually coordinate with NSTAR, with MEMA, as to what resources are coming through as to not to overload. As many of you remember, back in 2005, we had a winter storm that took down quite a number of trees in the towns of Brewster, Harwich, Chatham, and Orleans. And unfortunately, our NSTAR crews were not equally split up. So if one town was giving lunch or buying lunch for everybody, they seem to have more NSTAR crews than another. So what this does is it just kind of makes sure that we can prioritize what needs to be handled first. So if we have a problem at Cape Cod Hospital, that is the priority. We're going to make sure that we have NSTAR crews there. Or if we have to make sure that we keep Willow Street open or something to Outer Cape Health, we will make sure that those things are prioritized properly. So we are ready to open that. It is tentatively scheduled to open up at Otis at noontime on Friday. We were expecting a landfall with this storm sometime either Friday afternoon or Friday evening, Saturday after midnight. And so what we're hoping to do is to have all of these things in place beforehand. We have talked to the governor's office. The governor's office has, and the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency has confirmed that they will assist us in any need that they can. Right now, we have very large stores of water that were left over from the MWRA incident in Boston, and those are located at Otis at our disposal if we need it. We're also expecting them to have sheltering supplies and also food, ready-to-eat meals, MREs, meals ready to eat, pre-staged over on this side of the bridge before the event occurs. That was our request actually directly to the governor. We have received some updates from NSTAR. They will be starting to beef up their operations. They have gone into their emergency operations plan. They're sending more crews to the vineyard, and they are going to weigh how many crews they're going to send here to the Cape tomorrow. And so we hopefully in the next couple of hopefully between tonight's runs and tomorrow model runs with the weather, we'll have a really good idea as to what's going on. Our volunteer agencies like Medical Reserve Corps, CERT teams located within towns, we also have a DART team and the Red Cross. Everybody is working well together, and to be quite frank, we are, not that you can never be ready for a storm, but we're prepared. And We have been working the last two to 3 days. I was actually very happy to see how well this plan has come together. Very happy to see how well we're prepared to go through all of this. And hopefully, let's knock on fake wood, it's a miss. But as of right now, we do have some concern.
Do you have any questions?
Could you just explain a little bit on the chain of command? I know in our town, the chief is the chief emergency response officer, and we have mobilized the DPW and other agencies, so we know where we're going to be for different things. But just a little clearer on that.
This is a local issue. We provide support to the locals. Every town has an emergency manager that will be responding to this as well. As a matter of fact, this is their show. So in the town of Barnstable, the emergency manager is the chief of police, Chief Paul McDonald, who is present at our meeting today. All of the towns will be ramping up all of their operations as well. My guess is that a lot of towns have already begun having their meetings with their department heads and everything else to start making sure that their assets are ready, and that they start doing things like DPWs, getting things ready for sandbags, making sure that everything's pulled in from the beach, fire departments, police departments, making sure that everything is ready to go. The emergency management manager in that town is the person that runs the show. We are a support agency. We are a support option. The reason why we do what we do is the 15 towns have asked us to do it. And that's why we have come together and we formed this multi-agency coordination center. And also, that's the reason why we have the Regional Emergency Planning Committee. It's actually a way where all of us can get together and to work towards an issue like this storm.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, if you don't mind, is it possible I could ask Mr. Hoyfelder a question?
If he's willing to answer it.
George, thank you for coming in. And this question has more to do with the aftermath of a storm, with shifting sands from an offshore storm or a hit from a storm. Some of our embayments will be silted in. Certain shoals will be moving around. I'm wondering, does the county health department or the local boards of health have any authority, considering the window for dredging? Do they have any authority in an emergency for emergency reasons to go back in and do some selective dredging so that we don't have a problem with tidal flush and the embayment issue of making sure that we get the nutrients out of there?
Sure, I'd be speaking outside of my realm of knowledge. That would probably be our dredging department. What I thought you were going to ask is about the beaches and about after the storm, because in the aftermath of a storm, our sort of support to the towns, the health department support, we primarily getting the hospitality agencies back up, the restaurants and the hotels. Anything that happens in there, such as refrigeration going down, food spoilage, things like that, that's where we mobilize. And as far as beaches, if we have to monitor the beaches, of course, which is where I thought you were going, I'm sorry, that we would go immediately in and verify that the beaches could be either open or closed. But our response is primarily in the area of the health. As far as the dredging, I think we'd have to talk to that department.
Thank you.
Yeah, question is two things, speaking as someone from the Outer Cape, whenever there's an event like this, and we had a squall that came through about 3 or 4 years ago that wiped out a lot of trees, came across Pleasant Bay. Nobody quite knows what it was because they saw it, but they saw the aftermath. And what happens is a lot of trees come down, and they come down in these little planned areas, where you have one road in, it's Bayberry Acres, and the trees come down. And unfortunately, even though there may be shelters, a lot of people get stuck. They can't leave, and also, especially if they lose power, it's a double whammy. So I don't know who obviously NSTAR will deal with it if it's a power issue, but who deals with keeping the roads open so that people can get there? That's the question.
That case would be local DPW. If local DPW was overtaxed, what they would do is they would send a request to the Multi-Agency Coordination Center, the MAC. The MAC would request some support and open and hopefully request that through the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, where that could come down. An example of where we had to do that once was actually was snow plowing. One time with Willow Street, we couldn't get it clear, so we actually requested state plows to make sure that ambulances could make it to Cape Cod Hospital.
All right, and I have a question for George, too. George, coming as, you know, Chatham is a big shellfishing town, and I know this is true in the Outer Cape. Sometimes there's an event like this, you know, and there's a lot of rain and big tides, it tends to cause a lot of damage to the environment, you know, from just runoff and also, you know, oil, gas, whatever. Is there an issue with the closing of a lot of these beaches and to shellfishing and to, if in a storm? Is that a state call, or?
Normally after an event like this, the state will close all the shellfish beds.
Yeah.
And they close them mainly because they have some history of how long that cleanup period will take.
Yeah.
It also gives sort of a cooling off period where the agencies within the town can do an assessment if there has been like a fuel release, obviously. If it's just runoff and contamination, fecal coliform, those indicators, both on the beach and in the shellfish areas, usually 1 or 2 tidal cycles take care of it. So by the time that is gone by, we can mobilize to monitor the beaches if that's necessary, although Bob Duncanson does a phenomenal job there. If he requires any support, of course, we'll give it to him.
The towns that don't have a lab, could they use your
Yes, absolutely. We maintain our beach program all year round, actually. You know, between updating the data, getting ready for the next year, we have a person just responsible for that. And we're in touch with all the boards of health as far as their desire to either open a beach or sometimes they just want to keep it closed. We're going to have some strange tidal motion, some strange water motion. Some of those will be just closed due to that. And some of the aftermath with debris in the water, I think they may want to keep them closed. But the laboratory's support, really, our history has been that if we need to be open, we'll be open.
Yeah, the good news coming out of this is not a high tide cycle. Right now, we're basically, the moon tides have slacked off, so maybe that'll help. But anybody else have anything for these gentlemen?
If I just might add, in regards to the hazmat portion of it, each town is equipped, and it would not happen during the storm, but after the storm, but each town has oil spill trailers. Just so you know, DEP, if we do get a pretty significant hit here, DEP is expecting boats to be sinking. So they actually briefed our fire officials and our police officials today of protocols needed to get out there and to assist in those oil spills.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, it has obviously an environmental impact, but it also has a very significant economic impact.
Absolutely.
You know, if people can't shellfish or if they can't go to the beach, it hurts. You know, it's still summer, at least for another couple of weeks ago. So.
And the sooner to get out there, the better.
Yeah. So, George?
The first people on the beach after a storm are the people with metal detectors. They're looking for Spanish doubloons and all kinds of wonderful things. It's very interesting to watch them this winter in those storms that we had. Is the sheriff's van, does the sheriff still have his big van, communications van?
Yes, we did hear from the sheriff's office today. The sheriff's van will be a backup. Should it be necessary. Our multi-agency coordination center actually is done in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, and it is located right outside of the Sheriff's Dispatch Center at Otis Air National Guard Base. But the van will be available should it be needed. Additionally, for additional communications backup, we also have a portable tower.
Okay.
The worst storm that I remember was the 1944 September hurricane, and it affected the lower Cape and the mid Cape especially. Of course, all the men were off at war, so the kids were invited to grab an axe or a saw to help people out, and I remember that very distinctly. A huge tree fell across my neighbor's house, pinning him in bed. By the end of the day, we had that out of there. The 1954, I think it was hurricane, there were 2 of them, one after the other. The second one did very little damage because all the damage had been done by the first hurricane. And that was, they had names, but I can't remember them. I certainly hope that you made a special point to contact the people in Provincetown, because Sean, after the sewage explosion on July the 4th, that they tried to handle by themselves.
Sure.
We spoke on the phone afterwards.
Yes, we did.
I don't know what was in their heads, but they should have known about your services and should have contacted you immediately.
Yes, Provincetown does participate with us. They are a member of the Emergency Planning Committee. We will be in contact with the police chief and the fire chief as well.
Yeah.
Whenever we send notices out, we make sure that we get them to the police department and
Thank you.
fire
I
department.
appreciate that.
And I just want to reiterate, too, that this is a local emergency, and we are support. So we're there for the representatives in your town, the police chiefs, the fire chiefs, the emergency managers. And that's why we do this.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Excellent.
You have anything else for us, Bill, or?
Yeah, actually, I was going to, this is more of a shame on you, Leo, for not telling us this. Do you know that at the farmer's market in Harwich, you can get free Wi-Fi? Yeah, well, why didn't we tell people about that? Because you can go shopping, participate in Buy Fresh, Buy Local, and keep track of what's going on. So I thought that was really great. You know, part of the reason I found out about it was that in this economy, I think that we're all trying to do what we can to help people get access to opportunities to find jobs. And I had approached CLAMS to find out what the libraries could do to participate with the Workforce Board to see how to get either connected with JobLink or find out how we could facilitate the process by which people didn't necessarily have to leave their town, but get to some place that that could be helpful. I was happy to find out that in Harwich and Falmouth, at least, the research or the reference librarians do have a lot of knowledge on it, and in Harwich there is one, if not a dedicated computer, there is one that's that's available to be very helpful. And I have the feeling that there's something like that available over in the main library in Hyannis. But in any case, it's something that people should know about, that another resource within their community is to go to the reference librarian, and they can offer some direct help, as well as going to the the job offices in Orleans, Hyannis, and of course in Falmouth. I don't think that we can afford to forget about the fact, especially since we're getting towards the end of the season, and now we're getting to that point where jobs are going to be a little bit tougher to come by. I want to make sure that people know that the county is trying to do what they can to put things in place where they could find opportunities to, let's say, to get employment. And that's basically what I had to tell you.
Bill, one thing I hesitate to bring this up, but
then don't.
But I'm going to bring it up anyway. It's September, and you know what happens in September is they start working on the bridge again.
The bridge.
The bridge, and the Canal Area Regional Task Force is reassembling itself and will be meeting. And I know it's been a subject of concern for the assembly, so I thought you might touch on. But Tom, did you have something to say about that?
Yes, the Conservation Law Foundation notification of a lawsuit that was filed. I had a couple of questions about that. My understanding is there are two lawsuits. One's the EPA, and the other was the notice to the Cape Cod Commission and the county that they were, if certain remedies weren't taken within 60 days, they'd be file a suit. And I guess what I'm wondering is, I want to repeat the information that or the advice I was trying to give before when there was discussion about strategically planning for the lawsuit, that we involve at least consultation with a legal team, that because this is going to be a very complicated, I think, and difficult journey for us. And one legal question that I had, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at this yet, but the Cape Cod Commission is a department of the county, and the lawsuit seems to be directed at both the Cape Cod Commission and the county. And I'm wondering if you've discussed the jurisdictional aspects to that. I mean, it would seem that is the Cape Cod Commission going to have separate representation? Will the county provide representation for both bodies? Are we going to be on the same path with that?
I think that is an interesting and important question. However, what you're asking bears on what I would call the development of a litigation strategy, and I would suggest to you that that's something that I believe we have scheduled at our next Commissioners meeting. At that point, Andrew Gottlieb has told us that he would be prepared to talk about the wastewater collaborative piece, and we intend to have some discussion about the proposed symposium that we were planning.
Right.
We want that to go forward. But at that point, it's our intention to go into an executive session to talk about a litigation strategy which would address parts of that, and probably all of that, because the point comes: what is the strongest way to, let's say, to represent our interest in this? And we think that we're wise to seek advice from the people that we put in place that that would.
Well, I voiced this before. My concern is that thus far we seem to be relying on very intelligent and very well-meaning staff that we have on staff, but they're not attorneys. They're not folks who have and before we go too far down the road of what our legal strategy is going to be, I think we need to be in consultation with attorneys who do this. For instance, just what's the financial impact? Now, a discussion I had early on when I asked this question, I was told that insurance, because we're being sued, would have an insurance policy that would cover this. And I don't, that was going to be my second question on the financial end. Does the county carry insurance that'll cover the cost of this legal suit? That's the way I was, because originally we were talked about, should we join a suit? Let's say they only sued the EPA. I was told by county officials that, well, if we did that, maybe we should be in that suit with them. And if we did that, that would be on our dime. But if they sued us, then we had insurance to cover that. So that was one of the questions that I was trying to get clarification on in terms of what the financial implications would be to the county. Has that been discussed yet? Do we have that sort of policy, Bill?
My recollection, Tom, is that that our insurance coverage, which is at one point was 100%, has been attacked by a deductible, and I'm not sure what that was. The last time which is a couple of years ago, I believe it was reduced to about 50%. And at that point, I think that's when we put together the so-called litigation review committee that brought people together. I understand your concern about about engaging legal advice, but I would point out to you that we have 3 attorneys that that are full-time working for the Cape Cod Commission, not the least of which is...
So we get back to that issue again. Are you going to use the Cape Cod Commission attorneys as your attorneys on the suit?
That is under discussion at this time. Okay.
And I guess I'll just repeat it. My advice would be that this is a specialized area. It's going to be costly. It's going to be very complicated. And I think we really need to seek outside counsel that can help develop a strategy on that. Okay. I think it'd be money well spent up front before we go too far down what might be a strategy and then might not relate to what the filings and actual costs might be.
Okay. It is my hope that would be that would be part of a discussion of what our strategy would be, as we go forward. Although we got the letter, from the Conservation Law Foundation, it is just a notice of intention.
Right.
And until we are given notice of being joined in the suit, that's a separate issue. As far as looking at this thing, I believe that we were warned some time ago of the possibility of this, and at that point, there had been what I would call informal discussions about what we should do. But the question of engaging outside counsel is one that has been talked about already, because of a concern of the amount of time that it would take and the responsibility that we have to to the day-to-day business that we have in the county. But all of this, I think, would have the support and advice of counsel. And of course, the county has counsel, Bob Troy, who is certainly part of this overall discussion, and based upon the advice we've gotten in the past, at least during the time that I was a member of the Cape Cod Commission, they have not been reluctant to recommend the use of outside counsel when they felt it was in the best interest of the county, and in most I'd say in all cases that I can recall, it was a wise choice, and I believe that our outcomes, supported that. So
And
it's certainly not something that I'm personally adverse to, but I think that one of the things that that you rely upon is for us to take a look at this picture, and then and then how do we use the assets that we have, because we do have some funds that are identified to support this.
So you mean the 400,000 in our legal reserves?
Legal reserve. So it's not our intention to, let's say, to look at that as as a way of supporting that kind of a strategy. But again, I think we have to look at what we're faced with, what we need in order to support it, and at that point, bring in those assets that that would help us develop a strategy that would that would respond to it.
Well, I just know that examples in my own town where we have used special counsel, and it's been a very costly lawsuit, and we've won. And in those instances, the planning process right from the start is very, very important, so you want to get off on the right foot. I guess my final question was just going to be, would you continue to, share the legal strategy with us in executive session because of the fact that we will be probably sharing and trying to help out with the expenses as we move along?
I believe that that's a question that would have to be answered by all three of us rather than just myself, but I certainly will, will bring it in.
I would make that a request, and if you would do that, I think I as one member would certainly appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
George?
Yeah. I remember when the county or the Cape Cod Commission sued the Church of the Transfiguration in Orleans. Yes. And the cost to the county was, I think, $600,000 in legal fees, and it was covered by insurance.
That was
before your time.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Because more recently, I remember sitting on a committee that approved the bell tower.
This lawsuit, and I hope they win, because I think they're right. And I don't know how you'd fight something like this.
I would suggest to you, George.
Is correct. The CLF, the Conservation Law Foundation's suit against the EPA, I think is a correct sort of thing to do after all these years of high-level and low-level pollution that existed in various parts of the Cape that haven't been corrected. I think eventually the towns, of course, react differently when they're threatened with problems of pollution, but many of the boards of health are not capable of dealing with things like this. For example, I know in Provincetown there's been a problem in the harbor that's been monitored off and on for 43 years. And unless we get some sort of direction from an outside agency, this sort of thing isn't going to change. And the CLF, of course, was very correct in going after Boston Harbor pollution. They also fought the beach buggies on the Cape, which I was involved with when I was on the advisory board of the Cape Cod National Seashore. I had my feelings about this, but the CLF never loses. I've never heard that they ever lose. And I think we have to respect their judgment because they plan things very carefully. And in Rhode Island now, there's only one Board of Health. And a doctor who practices there told me it's the best thing that ever happened. Now, the population of Rhode Island is about twice that of Cape Cod. I think we could easily use a single Board of Health on the Cape. I'm not saying the county health and environment department, but it's at least a single board of health with local boards that maybe are in an advisory position, but certainly not the kind of people who would make firm decisions because it's not working, at least where harbor pollution is concerned. We have a health agent in Provincetown who believes she was abducted by aliens. She's still there. She's paid over $57,000 a year. We can't go on this way.
Did they give green cards to extraterrestrials?
Buckle down and face the facts, and I think the CLF is right, and I hope they win. Thank you.
I don't know how we respond to that.
Let me ask you this question, just to follow up on this. Obviously, lawsuit is something you're going to have to take seriously, and I appreciate the offer of allowing the Assembly in on some of perhaps some of the decisions, at least letting us know what's going on. But at some point, these law firm, whether it's a law firm or the in-house counsel, is going to have to answer to somebody. Somebody's going to have to sit there and say, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it can't be 50 of us. So, I mean, how do you see that? I mean, if it's the commission, if in Tom's question, is it going to be the commissioner, is it going to be the county, is going to determine who's going to basically direct the legal strategy and make the decisions, you know, assuming you have a law firm, they'll come to you and they'll say, should we go this way? Do you want to settle? So on and so forth. I mean, do you feel confident that the structure is there so that they know who they're talking to and who's going to give them direction?
I would suggest to you that that's the reason why we put the litigation committee in place, and the litigation committee is chaired or headed by, by Bob Troy, who works for us directly, and Mark Zielinski, and let's see, and of course Paul Neswicki and Patty Daly and Jennifer. Are all part of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, I don't doubt it. I just don't want a situation where so-and-so has to answer to so-and-so, who has to go back to so-and-so, who goes back to so-and-so.
It is clear in Senate Bill, was it 1182, that's that said that you are the advisor. It's the advisory board that overwatches county expenditures, and this certainly is a big expenditure. So I don't, both by statute and by intention, I certainly intend to, let's say personally, to make sure that as we go forward, that we reduce the amount of surprises that that are part of this.
Okay. Anyone else have any question on this subject, Fred, or anything else?
Just maybe one or two things. Bill, in our package that we received from the clerk, the letter to Secretary Galvin from Scott Nickerson lists the people who are running for county assembly, and there's one written in pencil. How does this, any thoughts about how this is going to go forward? I think in the paper it talked about possibilities of write-ins and the possibilities of stickers. Is there any more that can be done about going to the state and asking them to change this ballot and what happened as a result of, I guess, some mistakes that were made by Scott Nickerson and his person who was helping him?
Scott Nickerson, who is our county clerk and has been our county clerk for almost 10 years, has done everything that was required of him in this instance, and has, in my opinion, served well. The county commissioners had the responsibility of appointing the county clerk, and Scott has been appointed to this position over those years. Scott did approach the state, and as a matter of fact, the 12 people that are on the ballot are as a result of him taking those papers up there to make sure that they were accepted. The next part of the process, there may be an interest on the part of the people that find themselves excluded from the ballot to seek, let's say, personal redress by some type of, let's say, litigious personal action. However, in the absence of that, in the case of Bourne and the case of Yarmouth, there would have been a contested race with two people on the ballot. In the case of Provincetown, Truro, and Orleans, that is a case of only one person. I would suspect, let's say in terms of stickers, yeah, what you do is you either print some stickers up and hand them to people, as they go in and ask them to vote for you, or you tell people to put your name on the ballot, as you do that. Now, I can't undo what's gone on so far, but what I can offer personally is for those people who are interested in this election cycle. I run a program over at Community TV to let candidates have an opportunity to introduce themselves to the electorate, And I would use this opportunity to reach out to all of you. I'm running this, I tape Mondays from now until I get to the middle of October. If you think that that would be useful to, let's say, to give visibility to your candidacy, however damaged, I would be happy to do that. I've reached out personally to, well, I guess through you, to Deborah McCutcheon down in Truro. I've talked to Cheryl Andrews directly in Provincetown. I haven't talked to Chris yet, but I certainly would make that offer to you. You probably have better experience with this. Didn't you run on stickers the last time? So you should be a veteran on this by now. See, who else is... I don't know how to get a hold of the guy that's running against you, Dick Anderson. So I guess you'd have to tell me how to get a hold of him. But I would be happy to do that part of it. I think that, as I said in the paper, this is it's an unfortunate situation, but. I think I think we can learn something from it, and I think going forward, I think all of us can let's say try to do a little bit better.
Okay, I'll recognize Chris.
Just speaking as an interested party, I have to take exception to the statement that he did what was required. One thing that has bothered me about the whole situation is that there were misrepresentations made by his office that things were taken care of, that packages were complete, and that they would take care of the filings, which they did not do. Nor did they inform anyone about packages that they thought were either defective or missing pieces, nor has he done the favor of a phone call or even return phone calls to interested parties who have called his office. So I, for one, would be in favor of having him in here, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, to see if maybe we can, as was suggested, do better in the future.
Well, I could ask him to come in, but you have to ask yourself whether or not it's going to be, if it's going to be a confrontational meeting. He has, unfortunately, the right to say that he doesn't want to come in, or he doesn't feel that we're in a position to discuss it. But I think, in a few times I've talked to him, you're right, he hasn't been as responsive as he could be, but I could make that request that he would come in and explain how everything happened if he's willing to do that. So if he keeps getting attacked in the paper, though, I have a feeling he's probably in a bunker right now somewhere. So,
well, I would just say I think it would have been better had some responsibility been taken up front, because now it has put some people in the position of some candidates, or I can't really use the term candidates, I would call them, I guess at this point, interested parties, in the position of him sort of casting aspersions upon them and what they had done in relying on statements by his office, and he has not taken responsibility yet for that. And so in the end, if someone files suit or tries to get an injunction, it is going to be a county expense that could be avoided.
Well, that's my concern, because if this does, as Bill suggested, this does lead to litigation, you have to be very careful about bringing someone to a public meeting and discussing something that's later on he's going to have to testify, as you probably know, as an attorney. So, I mean, I'll broach the subject with him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he decided it wasn't his interest to do that. But
okay. So let me be clear that at this point, this resides at the State House, and that if suit indeed be brought, it would be brought at the State House. They are the ones that have, that have ruled about the papers. The intermediate part is, is something that doesn't relate to the final, let's say the final refusal. I think it's very unfortunate, but it must be said that let me give you a little story. The first time I ran for county assembly, I was unopposed. And the reason I was unopposed was that Tom Peterson, nice guy, didn't file his papers. I mean, he got the signatures, but in those days you had to go up to Boston and then bring them back. So he hadn't done the, was it the statement of financial interest? Yeah. And I had. So I know that these things are, have difficulties. In this election cycle, when I filed tried to file my, was it SFI? The site was down because the woman that ran the software died, and no one in the office knew how to, knew how to run the software. So they had to hire a consultant up there in order to, in order to set the thing up. So finally, the day that the site was open, I filed my papers and I got my receipt. Unfortunately, I printed two of them. One I gave to elections to get on the ballot, the other one I kept. But a month later, I got a letter from the ethics telling me that I owed them $200 because I hadn't filed. Because what had happened was, the day that I filed was the beta test day, and everybody that had filed, there was 6 of us, everybody that had filed that day were wiped out and weren't on the system. So if you take a look at my site, if you're taking a look at my filing, you'll see that it was online up until this year, where it was put in manually, and they had to put it in manually in order to because I had the receipt that I printed out, that I could verify that I indeed met the obligation. So there are a lot of ins and outs on this thing, but I'll say again, Scott Nickerson is the county clerk that was appointed by the county commissioners. He's the one that let's say that, and I have not read and although there have been a lot of statements in the paper, I have not read any place where Scott has failed to step up and assume responsibility for what his part has been. So having said that, I know that in this process there are many ways of looking at things. There are many ways of deciding as to where you stand on this, and all of you have the ability to take what action you think is appropriate in order to be made whole.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and my concern is what's the role of the assembly as a body in this dispute, and as much as I might disagree that he did everything that he could have, because I have a receipt saying that I handed in my papers, which I did. Unfortunately, that same receipt was given to just about everybody who walked in the door, whether they had filed their papers or not. But that, I shouldn't have even said that, but I'm thinking that we should probably stay out of the elections process, but if it's the wish of the Assembly to look into it again, we can do that.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would respectfully disagree. I think that the role of the Assembly is at least to get the facts. And if the facts are as they're reported, which at least in some cases of people coming in July and filing their papers and being told that they were completed, which is before Mr. Nickerson went on vacation, then I don't think that this lies necessarily at the door of the state, but that there is a county issue, and I think we need to have the facts. So I would encourage inviting him to come and speak to us.
Fred?
Yes, and I just wanted to say that I think, Bill, you're kind of minimizing the damage and the embarrassment to the county. I think when you read the articles and we hear people, they're talking about the county making a mistake and creating a very difficult situation for towns to elect their assembly delegates. And I say the county, I mean, this letter from the county clerk to Secretary Galvin lists those people, but it does not list other people who appeared at the county clerk's office and filed what they thought were the necessary papers. Now, where does it? I don't see where it says that. Sorry, but there were other people who did not file the proper papers in this letter that was sent to Secretary Galvin.
I don't believe I was copied on that letter, but I'm not disputing what's in it, and I think
it says you are, but it says you were CC'd.
It wasn't in my package today.
But I agree with Paul, and I think that if we can understand the facts and be able to report to the people in our town what is necessary to move forward, that would be a proper thing to do. So I agree. We should try and find out what the problems are.
I have no problem doing that. Just to explain where I'm coming from, is like, for instance, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts sets up a parallel process with elections that's under the Secretary of the Commonwealth, Bill Galvin. He's elected separately. It has nothing to do with the legislative branch, even he oversees the elections. And they do that for a reason. They don't want us to be determining the processes by which we're elected. They want a separate. Now, that's being said, you know, we're all, you know, we all know each other, and in a sense, he is appointed by the county as clerk, so I have no problem asking him. But there are certain things that I just think that there are boundaries that we can't cross in pursuing our own interests as elected officials. You have to understand it's another process. But then I'm usually a sticker for them for that stuff anyway. So we'll talk to him, and if he's still answering his phone, we'll get him in here. Okay. Anybody? Hey, George, do you have one more thing?
If nothing else, it's bringing the Assembly some attention.
Yes, I think that's needed.
I ran on a sticker campaign after I'd been serving for a while. My youngest son was growing up, and we were having a lot of fun, and I said, it's time to do something else. The woman who promised to run didn't turn in her papers. So I ran and wasn't really interested in it, as it turns out. So I ran, and it's not an enormously difficult thing to do, and I think everybody will understand.
I got slightly more votes than Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck the first time I ran. I ran on a write-in campaign because there was no candidate. But fortunately, I beat both Mickey and Donald, so here I am. So, Fred?
Yeah, I want to move on to a couple of other things, but I know also, you know, the incumbents here are aided, I think, I have been a part of that, by our clerk in filing their necessary papers. And
that's not true.
That's not true?
That's not true.
We, in terms of ethics filings and so forth, we are not.
She nags us, but no, she's not responsible.
Okay, all right, sorry. But Bill, and the idea that no bad publicity is good publicity has been proven to be a wrong idea. It's bad publicity is bad publicity, and the county has been. We've been trying for the 6 years that I've been here to try and put a very positive face forward to the community, and this is not a very positive position, I think. No. There are also a couple we have been in the news a lot because there was also the decision by the Supreme Court to favor against the Cape Cod Commission and with Cape Wind within the last couple of days. And the question is whether we're going to appeal that decision or have, I guess, what we now do in terms of what is the precedent, which may be set by the state overruling a local body in the citing of utilities or pieces of utilities, which is, I think, an important issue for us as well. And
I could respond to part of that by saying that it was the opinion of the Cape Cod Commission, because that was an issue that was brought up when I was still serving as a voting member. Yeah. And at that time, it was our opinion that the Utility Siting Board, while an important board in the Commonwealth, did not take into account that there would be a regional planning or regulatory agency that would, that would look at the interest of the, let's say, the constituents here in Cape Cod. That was part of the reason why we supported, supported that suit, to get, to get the attention and to get the support for our position as a regulatory agency, because that was the last time that we would have an opportunity to be heard with regard to an issue that materially affected our area. We feel, or I feel, and I'm speaking for myself now, I feel as though we have not been recognized sufficiently by this administration in Boston as to what our rights are. My contention is that while we have tried to be heard, and I believe that one of the towns has taken up that that struggle as well, that we are not being listened to, and that we are basically being told something that we will not get a direct benefit in, but we will be responsible for supporting, and there is a lot of support that's involved. No one has said what type of responsibility that the state will take up in supporting any issues that happen because of some type of an accident or event that occurs with regard to this. Those are questions that have yet to be answered. There are questions that have yet to be answered with regard to what the financial impact of the Cape Wind, what contribution it makes, and what contribution, and what liability it causes to our cost for electricity. All of those are based upon the supporters saying they're anticipating that it would be a benefit. Now, I maintained from the beginning, if Cape Wind had come to us like they did, as they did in Rhode Island, and said that they were ready to provide some type of a pilot support program as a revenue stream for the community, we would begin a negotiation on the basis of giving up what I would call a tangible benefit in order to support what would be what is a commercial opportunity. But these are all things that that have to be worked out, and that certainly is part of let's say part of an analysis of a litigation strategy to go forward. We have not heard from, or I'm not aware that we have heard from our attorney who represented us in that suit. I think it was Eric Lindemann. Just what his advice is going forward with regard to that, but it certainly is something that's that is a great concern.
And then there was the letter that a number of political parties put together to ask in support of the National Academy of Sciences reviewing the wastewater stuff, how the model was put together for the data collection and the data itself, and whether it can be counted on. Last week that letter was sent out.
Did that letter have any money with it?
I didn't see the letter myself, actually.
Okay, it doesn't have any money.
I just saw the report.
I was just wondering if it had any money that was part of it.
But that is something that is also going to be discussed by the county commissioners at the next meeting.
At the beginning, I know that when Andrew comes in, we're going to be talking about the symposium, and I think you're aware that there was an article that reported Paul Nowicki inviting the members of the NAS to participate in our symposium, that perhaps that would be, would be a useful beginning. My own experience with, with NAS in another, another venue is that their process is that there would be a proposal of a suggestion of something they would participate in. There would then be a process as to whether or not they would consider it. Then there would be a process by which an allocation of funds would be sought, and then there would be a process by which an appropriation would be made. That doesn't mean that it's been suggested in the press that you call them up today and in 3 months from now they come back with something. It means that you go through a deliberative process, and then several years from now you may or may not either get participation or a response from them. They may not. Well, they have to decide what what they would do or what they wouldn't do. We think that millions of dollars have been spent of your money with the state agencies. I think that the real issue is the state agency that we had depended upon has not opened up the black box that says what their formulas are. But even when they open up that black box, that would be a guide rather than an absolute, because it would only tell you what was happening at that moment, at the particular time that that their analysis would be made. And subsequent to that, given that we're living in a natural environment, there may be additions and subtractions that that let's say that occur that would change the circumstances under which those measurements were made. And I think that anyone that is looking at this sort of has to take that into account. The most important thing in all of this, because this bears on perhaps what that if this suit, for example, goes forward, I wonder what effect will that have. This is an additional variable that I don't think was factored in when some of these things went forward. But the price tag, which was suggested or reported to me, and I only know what I read in the papers, on this, between $400,000 and $700,000, was not too far below what I had felt would be closer to $1 million for doing the kind of studies that that were suggested. And I believe in the letter that that the county commission sent to the towns, we had said that if the town wanted to go forward to do this, they were certainly free to do that. And if they wanted to, and again, that the suggestion is, if you want to pay for it and you want to do it, there's certainly nothing, we certainly wouldn't object, and we would welcome collecting whatever information you got from that, and would try to use that to make the best product that we could. But at this point, my concern is that overt support for something that has a price tag with it without adequately determining what that outcome would be is a suggestion of something that we may not be able to follow through on. What we are able to follow through on is we had budget to support a symposium where we could invite experts in to, let's say, to take a look at what has been done and give the public an opportunity to, let's say, to speak to their concerns and then go forward from that. But in any case, that's all sort of up in the wind right now. But we're still planning to go forward with the symposium because we think it's a useful and valuable thing to do. And we'll more on this one, when we have that meeting.
Thank you, Bill, very much. I agree with you. I'm also in your area with Cape Wind. I agree with you that we shouldn't say we have to cut taxes without identifying what programs you would cut. But I think the whole idea here is that, at least from and I'm just bringing this up as matters for discussion. You're here and we're here, and people, I assume a lot of people are talking about these issues because they are front page issues. And the wastewater business has one that's been important to us for the last 6 years, but it's kind of been on the back burner to a large extent. But it's now very much in the front burner on a number of different fronts. Thanks.
All right. A couple of delegates may have to leave here because we're running ahead. So if you have to, don't feel free to get up and walk out. We won't be
When we're having so much fun, I can't imagine why anybody would want to leave.
The only objection I have, and this is a kind of rhetorical thing, is that when people call for an independent study, and they always seem to use that word, they don't describe exactly independent of what. And it seems to be that it's independent of the last study that was done. In other words, unless there's some suggestion that the previous studies were biased by somebody had some financial incentive to screw it one way or another, there's no reason to think that the previous studies may have been wrong, but there's no evidence to suggest that they weren't done in good faith, without a bias. So I don't know what they're going to be independent of, so you're right, and I think there's been quite a lot done, but
Although my classmates from, fellow physics majors at Boston College would say that I never got past 5th grade science very well, I would suggest that, what you're saying, is accurate. We operate on good faith based upon evidence that the experts were put in place are competent to perform their tasks. The flaw, if there is a flaw, is that they haven't shared with us what the formulas are. Yeah. And I think that black box needs to be opened up. And if indeed they are incompetent, then the executive branch of this government has the responsibility of running them off.
Okay. Well, that's you. Okay. Are we anything else for the commissioners? Bill? Okay, Bill. Well, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
We will now move on to communications from public officials. Do we have any communications from members of the public? The public have anything to say? Hearing none?
She can't once you convene.
I know, but that's why I thought, okay. As Charlotte reminds me, once the assembly convenes, we can't take public testimony, so if anybody wants to say anything on any matter that comes before the assembly, this would be the time to do it. Okay. I appreciate your being here. That's why I
Hello? Hello? Hello, everybody. My name is Darlene Johnson-Morris. I am the Director of the Americorps Cape Cod Program and the Barnstable County Resource Development Office. And the reason I was here was to answer any of the questions on the resolution that we have to transfer money, the cash match money, into the lines for matching funds for the Americorps program coming up for this year.
Okay. That we will be discussing proposed resolution 10-02 as soon as the assembly convenes. You should have all received a copy of that. It's been a routine appropriation, so I did not have a finance committee meeting on it since it's the middle of the summer and you guys are all busy. But if you have any questions, this would be a good opportunity to give them. Yes, Dick.
It's probably more of a comment than a question, but it seems that we keep getting these transfers of monies between Fund A and Fund B, and I don't think that anybody here knows what Fund A or Fund B is. Is there any way of getting a list, or not a list, but when we get these proposed resolutions, like this one here is to decrease 5750 by $48,920, but what is 5750?
I assume it's lines in the budget. This is what we're
okay, a line in the budget, but what line in the budget? And we're increasing 5101 by 32,000 and change. What is 5101? I mean, we know that they're going to be passed, but the idea is, what are we passing?
I would be glad to, I have a memo here, and I can have Jenny copy this for everyone. It gives you specifically what these are for. And I have that with me now. If she could make copies of it, I'd be glad to give those out.
That would be appreciated. I mean, I just like to know where it's coming from, where it's going.
The reason,
to.
yeah.
Not just numbers. Numbers don't mean.
No, I totally appreciate that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, you're leaving? Okay. Well, we're going to have to. Yes, we're going to have to convene here. So I'm going to go into. If they have any more questions for you, we can ask to suspend the rules. Okay. So I will now convene the assembly, and we'll begin with discussion of proposed resolution 10-02 to approve certain budget transfers fiscal year 2011 Resource Development Office Americorps Cape program. And so now we'll begin. Do any of you have any questions besides Dick? Leo?
I'd make a motion that we approve the transfer proposed resolution 10-02.
Okay.
I'm not going to read the actual numbers, but
yeah, as printed in the in the resolution.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Is there any further comment? Yes, Leo.
The only comment I'd like to make is this is I brought this up last year, and just so the public understands too what's going on is that when we entered the budget approval cycle, the $48,920 was approved, but the way I understand it at that time, our financial officers didn't know exactly where that money was going to be going in the different line items because of certain other grants and other receipts of money that these programs receive. So we're not, and the public should be aware that we're not appropriating $48,000 from somewhere. It was voted that that amount be approved for the Americorps Resource Development Office and Cape Cod programs. Now all we're doing is actually allocating those specific funds to specific accounts.
Okay, thank you. Any other further comment? Hearing none, we'll take a vote on this. Do we need?
Richard Anderson,
I'm going to abstain.
Ronald Bergstrom,
Yes.
George Bryant, Leo Kukunis,
Yes.
Christopher Kanega,
Yes.
Thomas Keys, Marcia King,
Yes.
Thomas Lynch,
Yes.
Teresa Martin, John Oman, Paul Pilcher,
Yes.
Anthony Scalise, Fred Schill,
Yes.
Charlotte Strebel,
Yes.
and Julia Taylor. Mr. Speaker, proposed resolution 10-02 passes with 54.87% of the delegates voting yes and 45.13 absent.
Not voting, okay. All right. Okay. Do we have any reports from committees? Hearing none, do we have a report from the clerk?
Yes.
Okay.
There will be a public hearing held on September 15th on the amending of the, no, there wasn't. Okay. There was a public hearing held today, September 1st, on the ordinance to amend Chapter G. The Assembly will be voting on this at the September 15th meeting that will be held at 2:30 p.m. In your packets is a listing of candidates that have submitted paperwork for the upcoming Assembly of Delegates election in November. And the Charter Review Committee will be meeting on September 13th at 4 p.m. here at the Assembly Chamber.
All right. Did Bill submit that, officially submit? He didn't submit the ordinance, okay. So we have an ordinance coming up, but it hasn't been submitted. Okay, is there any other business to be brought before the board? Yeah, Paul.
I just have one question. At our August 4th meeting, we had quite a heated and extended discussion about the authority that we had to make appropriations when it wasn't specifically noticed on the agenda. And I believe that one of the outcomes of that was we were going to pose a question to Attorney Troy, and I wonder if that's been done or is going to be done.
Well, I don't know because I haven't been in contact with Diane since that meeting, but I will follow up on that with Maggie Downey tomorrow morning, and we'll put it back into process. So if it hasn't been already submitted, it's going to be submitted. And Leo, did you have
in our correspondence, and I know we briefly talked about it, the letter that was sent to Mr. Galvin, there's on the second page, there's a gentleman's name which is written in pencil, and I think that the rest of the delegates should know that that was just a note that was given from somebody to somebody. It has nothing to do with the letter. So I think I think we should all scratch that out.
It's something that I wrote on there as a notation to myself, and it was copied and not removed before it was copied.
So we should just scratch that out. So if everybody will please do it, I think it would be, just respectful to the gentleman. It had nothing to do with the letter.
All right.
Just so everybody will understand.
Okay.
Thanks.
And I will be in touch with Clerk Nickerson and see what his inclination is to speaking to the Assembly. Okay, Leo?
Mr. Speaker, on that matter, I disagree with my colleagues that have spoke earlier and that we should invite the gentleman in. I don't think it's the function of this board at this time to get involved in that. He's not a direct employee of ours. If there's any concerns of his conduct, there are things in place which I'm sure will come in. I have not received any letters of complaints from the public anywhere that should require that I should take any action to invite this gentleman in. I just think it's improper at this time for us to do it as a board.
With that, I can't take any more comment on that because we've lost a quorum and we're not allowed to discuss anything substantial, but I'm sure it'll be brought up again, okay? So with that.
Move we adjourn.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Sorry, Dick.
How can we do that without a quorum?